okay, how can I be a professional puppeteer? I think I was working as an illustrator at the time, and I was coming home and I was like, I don't like this anymore. All I could ever find was information on like the core Muppet performers, like who started out with Jim Henson, you know, Dave Gold and Steve Whitmire and those guys. And I mean, we live in a different time now, and
we don't get started the same way. I'm always making this point, especially with friends that are older. Not to try to explain it to them per se, because they know, but we're always talking about how there is such a divide between the way that you have to pay to play to do things now, which is, I'm so against that in every possible way. I'm sure there has to be some exception, but you know, there's got to be a non-paying way to do this.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I could ever find. And I was so frustrated because I was like, but how do I do it now? Like, you know, how is it done now? And I've noticed that the more
reach into the choir, I said, I'm always
yeah. And
in 2016.
Right. And I noticed that some of the more recent Muppet performers, they have more straight up acting experience. Mm-hmm. So so kind of going back to what I guess at the beginning, what we were talking about was do you think it's important for a puppeteer to be able to do both, or work professionally even at both actor and puppeteer? Like, if they want to be a puppeteer, mm-hmm. do you think it's like essentially important to be like professional actor, at least minded?
I think just to have a native sympathy for acting, and maybe I could go as far as saying a native talent for acting, not necessarily to work professionally at both. I mean, time might not even permit if you're lucky and you get a lot of work puppeteering. But I think a lot of people do go into puppetry because they are already, you know, natural actors or experienced actors. I think if it's not entirely necessary, it's 99% necessary, because like I was saying earlier, if you know how to channel a character through yourself, it's going to make it that much more native to you to channel that character through, as I say, an external body, a puppet, a thing that's right beyond you, your physical self. So short answer, yes, I think it's absolutely necessary. There are people though, and this is like the other category that I'm thinking of when I say almost entirely. There are people who they come to puppetry through a different art or profession, people who come to it through graphic arts. And I used to meet, and still meet today, a lot of those who come to it through, you're an illustrator, you know what I'm talking about. There are people who
right.
do it through, I don't know. I've met people who come to it through sculpting. I've met people who come to it through some sort of plastic arts, through printmaking, through doll making. People who took a sock puppet class one time and decided I'm going to do this thing. People who watched tutorials online and learned how to, make puppets, and then they started performing those same puppets they made. In those cases, they're not necessarily actors by trade, but they have, or artists by trade, but they have a native feeling for it and talent for it that informs what they do as puppeteers. And it's interesting also to see the ways in which somebody who comes to puppetry from, say, I don't know, name a graphic art, somebody who comes to puppetry from painting or something like that is a different kind of puppeteer, almost necessarily, than somebody who comes to it from theater. The former person is probably going to be much, not always, but it's probably going to be much more of a builder and
right.
much more visually attuned to aspects of the profession and performance that the actor might not even think about. One thing that popped into my head is another category of people, in terms of what professions have people been in before they were puppeteers. Another one that I've run into sometimes is teachers and librarians who ended up being puppeteers, if not professionally, at least as part of their, first profession.
Right.
And that one, I almost want to say that's the same as being an actor who becomes a puppeteer, because they are so used to being up in front of people and working a crowd anyway.
Right, that's so true.
Those are the same people who are usually the best at doing like community theater. And I'm not saying, oh, they only do community theater. It's like if they have another job, then if they do theater, it's going to be like at night when everybody can make the rehearsals. And they're usually the people who are the most pro at it, because they, even if they're not like technically trained or whatever, and there are a lot of ways to train, but these are people who, as I say, are accustomed to being up in front of people and gauging how the crowd is feeling and how to switch gears and do something else if the crowd is not into you, and so forth. I mean, parents become actors in the same way, let's face it.
Sure. Yeah.
All the voices.
Very funny. Hey, Izzy.
Yeah.
Izzy.
Hmm?
I have a question for you.
Hmm?
I have a question. What is personal goals? Career goals?
Oh, yeah, okay. So, Izzy's personal goals are to ensure that in 5 years' time, all humans will be certified flushable. That is Izzy's goal. As president, I will make sure this happens.